I'm Melissa Ike from the Dragonfly Home, and welcome to another episode of our Human Trafficking Awareness Month vlog. I am here with Hallie from
Hello.
Dragonfly and Jayra.
Hello.
Say your full name and where you're from.
My name is Jayra Camarena, and I'm the founder executive director of La Luz organization.
And La Luz has been one of our partners at Dragonfly for many years.
Yes.
Jayra's great.
Oh,
That's why we have her here today. And so in this theme that we've been talking about this month, it's not the highways. Myths and misconceptions about trafficking. What are Oklahoma's real vulnerabilities to trafficking? And what do we need to know about other crimes that people experience? How that makes them more vulnerable to traffickers targeting them, how crimes might overlap. And we invited Jayra here because La Luz is a state-certified provider of domestic violence and sexual assault services. Anything else? Why don't you talk about La Luz? It's better than me.
La Luz, we're culturally specific, faith-based, and we provide services that are for domestic violence victims, sexual assault, and stalking victims through the whole state of Oklahoma.
Okay. How long has La Luz been around?
Next year in March, or this March.
Yes.
We will be 7 years providing victim services.
Really?
That's
7
amazing.
years? I didn't even realize you had been around for that long.
Time has flown by.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah. Tell me, Jayra, what inspired you to found La Luz?
I believe it was my calling to provide this type of services for the Latino underserved community here. So as I walked in faith, I've seen God confirm that to me more and more, and that's the reason why it all got started.
Okay.
So I would want to know with La Luz, like, what are some of the specific services that you guys offer in the community? Because I feel like it really is serving a group of underserved people and a big gap that we kind of have in the state of people getting services.
So we are certified, and under that certification, we have certain standards that we have to follow. So they're pretty much like everyone else's and like yours: crisis interventions, advocacy, case management, court support group, and awareness. But within those categories, our services might look different because they're more they could be more challenging due to the barriers that our victims have. For example, not being legal, not speaking English, not having Social Security. Those extra burdens or extra barriers, not burdens, barriers, make things a little bit more complicated. And a lot of our victims, they don't have family here. So the abuser has brought them from another state where they had family to isolate them here because it's easy since it's so rural. So it's a little bit more extended on the things that we do, and we base it also on our culture. So we understand that, family is a big part of how we do things. So a victim might have more challenges in taking a decision without her support group or like her support system. Sure. So having them get to know other victims that are going through the same thing and understanding those challenges, that it's not easy, why they go back and forth, because they don't have their mom or their aunt giving them those advice. It's something that we take in consideration, and it's part of the culturally specific and then also the trauma-informed services that we provide.
I love that. I think it speaks a lot to also how we do services, and I think that's why we partner so well together. We're all very much focused on the same mission.
It's a good point, Hallie. I would actually really like Jayra to talk about how we partner. So La Luz so we all have a certification from the Oklahoma Office of the Attorney General, Dragonfly for trafficking, and then La Luz for domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking. So those are very different crimes, but there is a lot of overlap. And so we partner with places like La Luz for numerous reasons. The one that comes to mind for me is sometimes people might get referred to you because someone thinks that someone has experienced domestic violence or sexual assault. But what they actually have experienced is a form of trafficking. But the overlap is enough that it can look similar on the surface. And then the flip side, someone might think that someone experienced trafficking and refer them to us, but as we're assessing for the situation, we realize this is maybe more of a domestic violence or sexual assault case, and then we might refer to La Luz. And so I would love for you to let us know, like, first of all, how does a partnership with Dragonfly work?
Well, I think that the partnership has developed during the years. And what we do is that when we have clients, well, let me go back.
Yeah.
Sorry. Not all victims disclose that they're trafficked victims.
Right.
So that's the first challenge that we have.
Because very few actually realize that that's what's happened.
Yes.
Very good point.
So we don't, like right off of the bat, we wouldn't know. We've seen through the years that we have to make a connection with the victim first. And then they're disclosing, oh, by the way, my boyfriend or my husband would make me have sex with his friends or with people for money.
Got it.
And that's probably like 6 months into case management.
And I think that's a big part of the discussion for all of the partners and people that we see in the community, is that the biggest thing is providing that safe space to build trust, because you're really not going to realize it in that first encounter, maybe not even a couple. But once that trust is built and they know these are safe people to talk to and discuss what's happened, that's when it comes out. And I think those are the perfect places for it too.
Yeah.
Do you think that sometimes also as people work with you and maybe they come out of maybe crisis mode, even memories surface that they might not have even thought of before?
Yes. And then they start, since our program, we do a lot of education. So we start educating them on what stalking is. We've also learned that a lot of Latinos didn't even know the word acecho, which is stalking. So how can you identify a crime if you don't even know what the crime is or what the crime is called? So educating them on different victimizations, they started realizing that they have polyvictimization. They have suffered different types of victimization. So we started working with them. And once we identify that that victim might not fit into our services because they're not domestic violence, they're not sexual assault, and they're not stalking, they're solely labor trafficking or sexual trafficking, then we'll go ahead and refer them to you. We'll either call you, schedule that, arrange that for a mutual place for us to meet, and then we'll let you guys take over.
Okay. But then if someone has experienced all those things, then we have sometimes can then work together on that case.
And I think we have.
For sure.
We have clients that we share and they benefit from both programs.
Okay. It's really amazing. You know, these are things that I've known for a long time, Jayra, that we work with you on stuff like this, but I've never been able to have a conversation with you one-on-one about it. It's really cool to hear about. So it's interesting you say that you're educating people about like stalking, right? So it's happened to someone, but they don't realize it because it's not even a concept. And stalking, even legally stalking, can get a little bit complicated in what qualifies as stalking or not. So something that we run into is that people we serve, I mean, trafficking is very misunderstood. A lot of myths and misconceptions. That's why we're doing this series this month. And every month for our whole lives. And so that education is really useful. So like you all have to understand trafficking too, because we have run in, this was a long time ago, but we heard about someone who had sought services in another state from a nonprofit. This was many years ago. And this person said, well, my husband was selling me for sex. I think that's sex trafficking. And that person was told, no, a husband selling a wife, that's not sex trafficking. We don't know what it is, but that's not it. Totally wrong, totally false. And that person did not receive services from that place. They did at Dragonfly. And so it's incredibly important for you all to be able to recognize that. And so I guess I was wondering, what are some misconceptions that maybe you have heard that you maybe believed? We all came into this believing misconceptions about trafficking. I don't know, how would you talk about that?
I think there's different ways that, well, I think there's different misconceptions that I have. I brought some that are culturally specific, right? That I came into the trainings that you guys offer. And also thinking, a lot of the Oklahoma misbeliefs that I've heard. But for culturally specific, I think that a lot has to do with people saying like, well, they choose to stay just like in domestic violence, or they're there because they want to.
Right.
I think that's the biggest. I grew up in Los Angeles, and there's a certain street in South Central LA that has a lot of prostitution. So I grew up seeing these were normal things that I would see. And a lot of the misconception was that it's that they're there because they want to. They could leave, but they choose to stay. That's something that they want. There's something that they like. And then the music that we would hear also kind of influenced that type of lifestyle. So there was a lot of misconception. And then I moved to Oklahoma, and one of the things that I heard, like Holly and I were discussing earlier, is the highways, right? So easy. And then I took the training with you guys, and my mind was blown. And also I have to say that I've been doing victim services for 15, 16 years. Human trafficking for me is new, and I think that a lot of people are in that same boat that has had, we've seen these things like throughout the years, but there was really no training or no label to say, okay, you are a victim of trafficking. Rather, we'll kind of just put them like, okay, they're victims.
Sort of domestic assault or violence, sort of sexual assault.
Because like you said, they do overlap each other. So yes, there's a lot of sexual assault and trafficking, and there's also a lot of coercion in trafficking.
That's right.
So when you want to do good, I guess, and you want to help, you'll just I would take them and just kind of like, well, you fit into this category, so let me help you. Even
do something because you didn't know.
When I received the training with you guys, it was like mind blowing to see, like, I could go back and start seeing like I missed this on that case because it was evident that person, now with the training, is like, that was not a domestic violence victim. That was a trafficking victim. And they do have different challenges because it's how could I put it?
It's almost like it takes their humanity away.
Yes,
and that's
like
different.
It's not that it's harder, like it's not harder cases. It's just it's tougher. Like
the trauma is different. So what we say is someone who's experienced sex trafficking or labor trafficking, like you said, there's a ton of sexual assault and labor trafficking. Sexual assault is inherent in sex trafficking. It's somebody who is experiencing that
repeated
20 times a day, every day for weeks, months, years. For labor trafficking, there isn't necessarily inherently sexual assault built into that crime, but we know it's a way to control people. It's a way to further victimize people. So then there's also physical abuse. There's the poly-victimization, which is not a word that a lot of people use every day. It means that someone is a victim of multiple crimes. So if someone's experiencing trafficking, in addition to these things I've already mentioned, there can be child abuse, child neglect, child sex trafficking, physical abuse. Then there's other crimes you might not think of, like identity theft, that kind of thing. But then you add this unique layer on top of all of that with trafficking, which is someone is no longer a human being. They're a product to be sold. That's a kind of trauma that you don't find in any other crime. And so that's why it takes both of us specializing in our areas we can work together, identify who we need to refer to each other, and then we can really get into those specializations for people.
And I think that it's important, and I love working with you guys because it's not only the crime, it's also the culture, the support, and having that support with experience from you guys, and then us offering that culturally specific, trauma-informed services. I see the difference in victims, and I love seeing when victims, you meet them one way and then like 6 months later you see them again and you don't recognize them.
Wow.
It's like it's confirming that the work we're doing works. Like sometimes you don't have to, well, a lot of the times you don't have to hear the thank you. You don't have to hear,
right.
you know, this is working. You could see it. And I love that. Like that gets me going. That wakes me up.
Yeah. It's that hope
Yeah.
piece that's so important.
I think that's what we talk about too, is our big thing is like the survivor achievements and what happens when people receive those specialized services. Because I mean, we've seen it. It may just be that trauma therapy. And it's like once that piece is in the puzzle, everything clicks. And then it's like success after success for people. And, you know, nobody's journey is going to be the same or look the same. But I think that is across the board. And the partners you're going to see in this podcast and the people we talk to, that is the heart of our services, is wanting that transformation for people.
Right. And of course we know I'm sure you've seen this too. You have to have that hope piece because healing is never a straight line. Like it's all good now. It's like sometimes someone will take a step forward and then like you talking about the different barriers people face, 3 steps back, and it's just like moving forward inch by inch. But that hope is life-saving and it's what keeps us all moving forward, the people we serve and us.
But I would like to add also on the education part, educating the Latino community about seeking professional help, such as certified agencies. There's a lot of people that have a good heart, but they're not educated, and they do more harm than good.
So I can speak to that. So I mentioned a few minutes ago that our programs are both certified by the Oklahoma Office of the Attorney General. So it is... What that certification means is that there's oversight. We're held to standards for our respective programs to ensure the best care. And there's a lot of required, legally mandated training that we have to do. So like at Dragonfly, I don't know what it is for DVSA, but probably similar. At Dragonfly, all of our staff are volunteers, anyone working with direct care. We provide a required 40 hours of training up front, and then we add more onto that, because like what Jayra is saying, like that's critically important. And so what you're saying is a lot of people out there have a good heart and they want to help, but it's important to refer someone to an agency that's properly certified so that we know that those people know what they're doing and there's some oversight.
And I think it's really important to point, like, the reason that that's so important is, like you gave that example earlier of somebody going somewhere to seek services. They weren't trained in trafficking and said, you've never experienced trafficking.
And that was not in Oklahoma, I want to reiterate.
And thank goodness, you know, they still did reach out to us. But the real issue is for a lot of people, that's the end. That is the end of them seeking services or reaching out for support. And so we really want, when people are reaching out, to receive the highest quality of care and at least talk to somebody that they can trust and that's safe, so that even if they're not getting help in that moment, they're still going to have it in them to want to reach out, want to trust others for services.
And like you were saying too, if a place is not certified and knows what they're doing, it can be dangerous for the client and for the person trying to help.
Yes. I remember a couple of years back, there was a situation where someone that wanted to help a victim was providing quote-unquote services, and they didn't safety plan, and the victim drove to see her perp, and he kept her for 4 days until police came and rescued her. If she would have been working with an advocate or a certified agency, she would have known that was not a good idea, right?
Might have made a different decision.
And we could have safety planned better or accurately. So it's important. It's important it's life-changing for the victims, but it's crucial for their safety as well. Since we're all trained, we also work with being trauma informed and also validating what they're going through, rather than victim blaming. I think that's the unique thing about our services, is that we receive enough training to understand that.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about I want to talk about the overlaps between domestic violence and sexual assault and trafficking, and then we can also discuss, we've touched on this a little bit, some of the differences, but can you speak a little bit to that? Some of the similarities, the way that they...
Similarities. I think that with domestic violence and human trafficking, we see a lot of coercion. We see a lot of manipulation. We know that they use the same tactics for like deportation, children, family, and isolation. To control, right? So always with that controlling behavior. And with sexual assault and stalking, we see that they also pursue them. They could groom them. My mind went blank.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
Sorry.
And it just always makes me think when we're talking about that coercion piece, being a part of domestic violence, sexual assault, and trafficking. But when you were talking about misconceptions earlier, you said one of the misconceptions was just thinking like people are actively making this choice. And I think that is the biggest piece of coercive control is from the outside to all of us, it looks like a free choice. But that person knows there's only one decision they can make without a consequence.
Yeah.
And that is so hard being on the outside because we don't know until, like you said, that trust is built and we can really start having those conversations to, figure that out with them.
Yeah. And coercion is also one of the hardest to understand and sometimes discern because it can be so gray, because it can be very like based on someone's personality, based on a very specific relationship. Like Hallie was saying, it could look benign on the outside, but within the context of that relationship, whether it's DVSA or trafficking, that's like, and for trafficking, for example, we see people specifically forming a romantic relationship or a friendship for the purpose of then exploiting that person.
I think that a lot of misconception, or another misconception between sexual assault and human trafficking, is that it's going to be someone outside of the family circle or friend circle, and it's usually someone that they know.
That's interesting. So for both, yeah. I mean, I knew this fact, but I don't know if I had like put that together. Absolutely. We have this idea that we know that it can happen. We know that, yes, the person can leap out at the person who's running by herself. That does happen. But whether for trafficking or, kidnappings can happen for trafficking, but so much more often. It's someone who's formed a predatory relationship. And so, I'm glad that you pointed that out.
I think when we're doing education, I think that's one of the biggest pieces too, that not only surprises people, but also kind of makes that light bulb click that it's not the highways. I think when we highlight that there's familial trafficking, where there's parents trafficking children, grandparents, friends of friends, mutual friends, and we start talking about how it's within the home and within these circles, that in itself dispels our highway myth of people, using the highways. But I think that education is so important because traffickers love the fact that we're looking outside of these circles.
Absolutely.
A trafficker wants you to look for stranger danger and not at them. And so I think that is big in the anti-trafficking work, is getting that information and education out really is the prevention of helping a lot of people protect themselves and their friends.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about this idea of grooming. We could unpack that a little bit. So why don't you talk about the grooming tactics that you see with sexual assault, and then I can speak to trafficking.
Some of the tactics that we've seen or that we've heard from clients that we've served, because we also do partner with the care center, and we have a good partnership with them.
The care center will also be featured this month.
Yay! We partner with them. In this case, it would be the secondary victim, which is the parent of the minor victim. So we have heard a lot that it's someone that they know. So it could be a father, a friend, a relative that has came into the relationship either as a friend with the parent to be close to the child, or in a love relationship with the parent. And we see that they're either giving gifts to the child, a lot of attention to the children, or the it would just depend on like the age group, right? But we've seen that there's a lot of attention that goes into it. I don't know.
No, that's very honestly I see a lot of similarities between that and trafficking. So it is this idea, what we say about traffickers is that they are experts in sizing someone up very quickly, determining what is it that this person is lacking in their life. So it could be attention, a relationship, someone who has low self-esteem, maybe they're being bullied, something as simple as that, showering someone with gifts, kind of this love bombing idea. But for some people with trafficking as well, it might be buying groceries if someone's on the street, a place to live. But so there's similarities there. It's a predatory person who's looking to use someone for something, and then they're going to groom them in the way that is so tailored to that individual. And that's what makes it so insidious.
And I think with the vulnerability of somebody who's maybe experienced domestic violence in the past or experienced being the child in the house of domestic violence, you can kind of see how that vulnerability of I would really want someone to care for me and appreciate me and give me that attention because I've grown up in this house full of violence. I would really love somebody who is sweet and kind to me. Or maybe it's the mom, and now all of a sudden there's this guy and he's actually really great with the kids. He's not violent, he's not mean. So there is that vulnerability tied in as well with past experiences of domestic violence or abuse.
So you see how in Oklahoma, if we have these super high rates of domestic violence and sexual assault, so not only can that beget a cycle within, like if someone's been abused or sexually assaulted, it can increase vulnerability to that happening again, can also really increase the vulnerabilities for Oklahomans. If you have a lot of people who are experiencing this, and then you have a trafficker that wants to use someone, and they can identify in them the trauma, the hurt, this pain from domestic violence or sexual assault, and they're able to craft their own message for this person to hit them exactly where they're needing, like Hallie was saying. And whatever that looks like for that person, if it just is somebody who seems like they might be nice to them, that they might say something nice to them, if they're craving that because of the trauma they have had from these other crimes, that makes a place with high rates of DV and SA prime territory for traffickers to recruit someone, to gain a foothold. That's why it is so important for us to understand here that if we're looking at the highways as the cause of this, if we're thinking that it's just something being brought in from somewhere else, we're overlooking the issues that we have here that make it just like very easy for traffickers to recruit someone, to gain that foothold. And then we're missing out on people that we could help. So that's why this conversation is just so important. Well, Jayra, as we wrap up, something we talked about earlier in this episode is the importance of hope and the importance of people knowing that they can reach out for help. So if there is someone who is considering reaching out for help to either you or to Dragonfly, that takes a ton of courage to reach out for help to complete strangers. If you've experienced something, maybe there's shame involved or fear involved, fear of consequences from someone who is abusive, what might you tell that person about reaching out?
I would tell them that they could give us a call, they could have a conversation with us, and they could share whatever they feel comfortable sharing. We know, like I said, mentioned before, like I've done this for a long time. So I know that a lot of the times when they call, they test the water. They want to see our reactions. They want to see how we treat them. So I know for us it's important for them to feel heard, valued, and respected. So those are the things that they're going to receive when they give us a call. We're not going to judge them. It doesn't matter how you got there. The point is that you gave us a call, and we will put you either in contact with you guys or we would help them. So just take that first step.
We acknowledge that it takes a lot of courage and that it's hard. But we've heard from a lot of people, as you're saying about you, and what we've heard about from people who have called us, is it's that there's no judgment here. We understand, like you said, it doesn't matter how it happened. It doesn't matter. No one's blaming someone. It's not about blaming someone. It's about what happened to someone. And now, okay, let's talk about what can possibly happen next. Let's see. There's so much hope to be had in true situations that can seem absolutely impossible and hopeless. But you reach out to people who can help find solutions. And like you said, just take that first step. It's important.
And also, you don't have to give your name, your phone number.
Okay.
You could just call and...
It's confidential.
It's confidential. So you don't have to give any information that you don't want to. And then it's up to you to say what you want for us to know.
You're in the driver's seat if you call.
And I think it's the same for both of our organizations, and I think that people just really want to know this too, that all of our services are free.
Yes.
We also at Dragonfly, we have bilingual services on our phone line as well, so if somebody calls, we'll be able to speak with you however. And then also, immigration status does not matter.
That's right.
Does not matter in the course of victimization. We are here to support no matter what. Your safety is always our priority. And so that remains regardless of somebody's status.
And also, like, not only Latinos are immigrants.
For sure.
Absolutely.
And not only the other language that we offer as services is Spanish. It's any language. It's for anyone.
That's right.
Because I feel like that's also a misconception. That's only, 2 languages.
Right.
So.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so Jayra, if somebody wants to reach out to La Luz, how do they do that?
Well, there's different ways. You can reach us out through Facebook, which is La Luz Org OKC, or Instagram. And we also have a helpline with the phone number. It's 405-812-0762. Or our website, which is laluzokc.org.
Okay, awesome.
Amazing.
And of course, you can reach out to Dragonfly at the dragonflyhome.org. And our 24-hour human trafficking helpline is 405-212-3377. Jayra, thank you so much for joining us today. I learned a lot from you today. I loved hearing about La Luz, learning even more about our partnership, and thank you for taking the time, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you, guys.